Hey gamers, this is Liz Davidson from Beyond Solitaire, and on this week's podcast, I have one of my all-time favorite guests, a returning guest, Jason Perez from Shelf Stories. How you doing, Jason?
Yo, my peoples, what's up? What is this with one of the best friends in gaming? I don't like that as being associated, lumped in with the riffraff.
If you consider David Thompson to be riffraff, then
I am the one. No issues, David. No offense, David, but I am the one.
Speaking of working through our issues, Jason,
We've already started.
Oh, no. The one thing Jason's number one at is amount of times I crack up on a podcast.
Yes. I'm gonna make you shoot soda through your nose at some point. It's gonna be amazing. You won't even be drinking soda; it'll just come out.
So I brought Jason on because Jason.
Focus.
So I brought Jason on because in his day job, Jason is a therapist who uses games to help connect with his clients and help connect his clients with themselves. And so, Jason, how is the practice these days?
So the practice, I'm not using games nearly as much now. I'll tell you that right now, because of the pandemic, because of COVID, and my in-person therapy it's very low, very low, for the very obviously reason why we're doing social distancing. I do have some clients, and we observe all the rules, and we wear a mask and we sanitize and we space them out. The waiting room is closed, so they all have to wait in their cars. But for the most part, the overwhelming majority of my clients, I see about 40-ish a week, which is a lot, a lot of clients. We're doing telehealth. So like the video chats like this, but not Zoom, because Zoom's not that safe. We have mental health and like doctor platforms like this. But yeah, this is mostly what's going to happen. So so gaming in person during COVID is definitely taking a plummet. I did do it. I still get it a couple times though. I'll never give it up.
That's fair. Yeah. So for full disclosure, everybody, I have generalized anxiety. I do in fact see a therapist myself. I have been using telehealth during the pandemic because I just feel I work in a public school. I'm surrounded by people all day against my personal will, and I don't feel like it is ethically okay to then go and be in the same room with other people who aren't in my quarantine bubble, as much of a bubble as I can keep.
Sure.
So, in better times, what kinds of games are good for therapy?
Depends on what's being addressed, right? So we should actually, before we do that, let's talk about like introducing games in general.
Sure.
Because you mentioned before how you wanted to know about like how do I pitch it?
Yeah.
Okay, so I think so the question, and then but from there I can get into like because the thing is like part of the sell job is like connecting, like explaining the game in such a way that like, okay, you have this problem, this game is good if you to help you practice the thing for this problem. So like that's kind of that's part of the sell point. So let's talk about the selling first, because there's a barrier, right? It's just a game. People have that idea that it's just a game. We're doing kid stuff. It's, I think, we're talking to gamers over here. How many of you, like your gaming shelves are like in a locked away room or in an attic or a place where it's like, okay, not in the main area. So if people like see it, they go, oh, wow, you're kind of a big kid, aren't you? So there's definitely that barrier to encounter. And when I lay a game on a table, I will fairly often get, okay, what are we doing here? Either they'll say it or they'll say it with their body language, like because people are nice and they'll go with it. But the energy is, I'm paying you $100+, like for this 45-minute session. Like, why are we sitting here playing a game of King of Tokyo? So, I think the way I explain it is there's a tool for every task, right? And especially if a person has been in a lot of therapy, and it's like, okay, you've been to different therapies. you're still in therapy, so clearly we need to have a different perspective on things. And my pitch, kind of like from the outset, is I'm all about perspective. Change your mind, you could change the world. I end every video on that. And I will do anything that will help a client change their mind about something. Anything. So it could be a game, it could be a puzzle, it could be a story. We tell stories. It could be role playing. We had a mini D&D campaign for one of my not D&D, but like kind of like a free form role playing thing. Just I will do anything to help people get perspective change. And if I can sell people on the idea that a game can help that, then that's kind of how I pitch it.
That's really amazing. I mean, I just talked to my therapist, but I think everybody who's in therapy goes through a phase, especially either when they're just starting or when they feel stuck, where they think, "Man, like, I'm paying all this money to just talk to somebody. Why am I doing that? Is this really worth the money?" And then I find out that it is in fact worth it, but you have to try it.
I was talking with somebody who was going through a divorce, or thinking about going through a divorce, and I was like, okay, try couples counseling. I was like, well, that's too expensive. Divorces are way more expensive. This is a chance that you can save a lot of money. I feel like, so I mean, I think that the it's too expensive thing is a little bit of an excuse. I think there's a stigma around needing help. There's a like people just don't want to admit it. So like they use the money thing or they use the time thing. Like, I mean, we know this in our lives, right? I mean, they'll say, I don't have time for it. People always have time for something that's important. You make time for things that are important to you. When you hear, I don't have time for that, what they're saying is it's not important to me, or what they're saying is it's shameful. And absolutely trying to fight back against that. I think that you've had that, like we had that. I mean, full disclosure, like, we're not, we're just going to go for it over here. Full disclosure, we've had that conversation. You and me. It's like, okay, should we? Is this something that's good for you? And it's like, what's the barrier? Why not try it?
Indeed. Yeah, I mean you just have to try things sometimes. All right. So to get back on track, so what games are good about solving the problem, so to speak? What kinds of games are go-tos for you? Because I feel like there's always overhead in terms of learning the rules of a game, but maybe you want to push some learning in order to get a little more depth. Like what's the trade-off there?
So okay, so I'll get back to so now I've sold the game. Now I've sold and let's say it just worked.
Yeah.
They are in, right, and I've explained it well. It's like, even though there's that initial resistance, like, why am I playing such a silly thing? So it's like, okay, let's give it a shot. So now it radically depends on what I'm treating, right?
Yeah.
So let's say it's attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, ADHD, right? ADHD treatment tends to be very, obviously you want to improve somebody's focus, and it also tends to be very tactile. Like, you want to get them to, kind of use their hands, be aware, be mindful. Because the thing with ADHD is you get captured. It's like, it's this, shiny ball, and you're just carried away from the present moment. So you want to help people, like, cling on to the present moment as much as possible and build that resilience, build that strength. So it's like a dexterity game is wonderful for that. So like, Rhino Hero, Minara, um, Ice Cool with the younger people, like people like games that like really challenge people to be present. So then, so okay, so like what do games do? Like, okay, it's not just about playing the game, it's about kind of like deconstructing the game and figuring out what part of the game can bring connection, healing, and build a skill. ADHD, it's the tactile and the focusing. Like Rhino Hero, like I remember I had one client, like, if everybody thinks they have ADHD, right? Everyone says like, oh, I'm so ADD. But like this guy, you look at this guy, it's like, okay, I don't have that. But he was playing Rhino Hero, he was focusing like a laser on the cards. he was so into it. He's like, I'm gonna get to the ceiling, you watch. And I was like, wow, you focus. This is great, and kind of go from there. So then, if I'm treating anxiety, right? And, anxiety is a good friend, right? Anxiety, it like I want to play something calming, and I want to play something that encourages a sense of safety. And like, in a way, all games do that. All games offer a sense of safety. Like the world, I don't know the rules of the world. I get screwed all the time. In the game, I'm safe because I know the rules. Hopefully, you know the rules.
Yeah, hopefully.
Or the rules are knowable. Hopefully, you have a good teacher and you've gotten yourself there. But once you kind of establish that boundary, now you're safe. And like, so a game like Parks, I have Parks. There we go. There you go. So this is, I love this game. It's a brilliant game. It's one of the games I'm going to review on the Dice Tower at some point. A game like that is wonderful for just putting the person in a mind space where it's calm and it's serene. It's not frantic. It's not like a million things I got to keep track of. It's just you can kind of very sink into the moment and you can kind of trust the moment, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so like an anxious person, that's exactly what the problem is. There's no trust. They don't trust their own safety. They don't trust the world outside. I always like to say the opposite of anxiety is not calmness, it's actually trust. And then the trust brings that calmness. And so that's where, a game like, a sedate kind of experience will help me. Or Onirim, I'll actually say like, okay, pick that up, play. Morton Monterey Prentice, my good friend, mentions Onirim specifically when he's keyed up, plays that game calm, serene, well paced, stable. Everything works. Everything's understandable. So stuff like that. So then, and every, I can kind of go down the list of the different things I treat too, but I think that gets the point across.
Yeah, can we also just enjoy the irony that a game that is about potentially being trapped in a nightmare forever is calming? Because it's true.
Not a nightmare, a dreamscape.
But not the nightmares are what's keeping you there.
But they're cute nightmares. They're
are.
very cute nightmares.
I know. I actually think if I had to like live in the world of Onirim, it would be like the nightmare cat comes up and be like, "Oh, kitty!" It would not know what to do because
Mm-hmm.
the bad guys are so adorable. Like even in like Sylvia with like the big fireballs, it's like, "Oh, you're so cute!"
Oh, fireball. Well, I think of a game like Cartographers too. Cartographers is another one I recommend for anxiety. I've talked about it in terms of like autism, which was a unique way to do it. But like in terms of a broader application, even the monsters are stable. Like the monsters are predictable. So like you get the monster and you have to draw it in the pad, and then they're just there, and they don't like boo like mess with you. It's like they're not kind of
Right.
jumps, like it's not like some of these other games that are trying to jump scare you. It's like or like mess with you with randomness. Like you don't want a game with a lot of like thrills when
Right.
you're like when you're in that space. And obviously like there are some people like there are some games like I will use Flashpoint. Where's Flashpoint? Right there. Flashpoint is another kind of game that I'll use when I want people to kind of like be thrilled and then deal with all that upsetness.
Yeah.
Like, okay, it's like, okay, I'm going to key it up. They call it exposure therapy, where it's like going to key up your anxiety. And then it's like, okay, all right, you can handle it. And then kind of bring them down that way. So that's
Yeah.
one approach. But, so it's like, it's all about understanding that games are vehicles for emotion. And understanding that this is all about. I'm a mood doctor. I like to say to my clients, I'm all about mood doctor. I want to help you improve your mood and stabilize your mood and manage your mood. So I'm going to give you this tool that has that can key up emotions in it, and we're going to try to apply it so that you can help you manage your mood, achieve your mood, whatever it is.
That's an interesting way to put it because I've actually said this before and I did not connect it to the fact that I have anxiety. But one of the reasons I like to game solo is that sense of control and comfort of like, oh, I can just kind of do things at my pace. I can stop, I can come back. Like there's no social pressure. I can do it my way.
Mm-hmm.
But I also prefer playing like a tabletop game to playing a video game or an app. And I think one of the reasons for that is because I'm more in the moment when I'm playing a board game than I am when I'm playing a video game. Video games are risky propositions for me personally because I can just disappear into them and pop out 8 hours later and I didn't eat. And, one of my most stressful periods of my life was when I was writing my dissertation. That was also the time when I racked up a 250-hour game of Skyrim. So the dissertation got written. It was great. But
My thing was WoW. I cracked a lot of hours of WoW when I was in grad school.
Right, and so, I think we do use games as stress relief. I actually think that that's something that's more common than people realize. I think that
Okay.
maybe we do it to relieve stress. We think we're doing it to have fun, or we say, "Oh, I'm playing games to relax." But it may mean more than just, "This is how I fill my free time." I think that games are inherently relaxing on some level.
I think there's a boundary, right? So video games are they're blessings and curses, right? Like
Yeah,
video game can be escapism, but in that bad way. So like you're putting off something that you should be confronting, right? Or I don't like the word should, but like that it would be healthy for you to confront. So it's like,
right.
I have a paper due and I have like some things that I have to talk about, but I'm just gonna play 16 hours of Horizon Zero Dawn and just like, let the world go away. That's not the best.
Right.
And they do it, they kind of on purpose. Like they're designed to be a little bit addictive. They're designed to be kind of like, to please your pleasure centers and like let some of the other stuff kind of wilt. So I'm gonna, and not every hour of WoW that I played was healthy either. Some definite things were delayed academically and personally,
Yeah.
for the sake of WoW. But it is, yes, it is absolutely there. And it's all about emotional manipulation. Like, we don't stop being emotional beings ever. Like we
No.
never ever stop being emotional beings. So we talk about escapism. There is no escape from being an emotional being. It's just a question of which emotions when, and does your emotional life cohere into something healthy, right?
Yeah.
So
I
then,
also think
yeah.
that's such an interesting point because I think one of the issues that we run into, especially with more gatekeepy gamers, is people game because they like to win and they like to view themselves as people who are smart, as people who are rational, as people who made the best decisions. And I think even then, you're still looking for an emotional boost from your game. It's just a different emotion that you're trying to create.
Mhm.
There is no such thing as a purely rational, logical gaming experience.
And there's no such thing as like a break. Like you like that achievement thing is an emotion. I think like when people think of emotions, they think of like the weepy stuff, and
Yeah,
they think of like attachment. What like the attachments that we have and how we react to our attachments, and then like I'm now doing just this thing that I can I got the achievement unlocked, all that kind of stuff. That's still emotion. It's just different, and the healthy emotional life has balance between all these things, you know. And I like games because in a way, like they can call up some real awesome emotion, but they're also
yeah,
severable. Like you're rarely going to sink into an individual game. Now you can sink into your collection. That's where gaming can kind of, and I made a video about this, about how games can and cannot make you happy. Like when you get to the point where you're invested in your collection and you're doing the retail therapy thing of like you're using games to kind of like the purchase of games to make you feel better, and
right.
it's just about adding, chasing the FOMO, doing all that stuff. Like that's where games can kind of go wrong. But
Yeah,
it's always a good like kind of rule of thumb that like every single aspect of your life is emotional, every single one. And so there are no breaks from it. There is no aspect of life that we could just like dive in and like
right.
that's going to be the thing that I need. It always has to be a balance. Always has to be a
Yeah.
balance.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that the thing that's so insidious about that too is that buying a game does feel good. That's why I keep doing it. Like, I mean, it temporarily does make you feel better.
Getting the box feels good. Getting something shipped and like having in front of your house. You haven't even
Yeah.
played it yet, but like having shipping notification. I can't wait. And then the
Yeah.
box in front of your door. That's
It's the
all like
sense of
pop, pop, pop dopamine.
yeah, it's all that sense of possibility, especially if you're feeling a little bit stuck, right? It just feels so good. Like I can introduce something new and exciting to my life right now. Ding,
Mhm.
cool stuff.
And then just
I
sits there.
actually I actually have to fight things on the other end now that I do more game reviewing because now I have more games than I can spend enough time with, really. Like I have a big backlog and I have to be more aggressive about pruning games for my collection because otherwise my space gets cluttered and then I get stressed. It's an entire different way to
Mhm.
be stressed out. um it's also, I think, especially for those of us who are into games the way that people who would watch this channel or listen to my podcast are, I think being into games that way means that you also carry with you some sense of obligation. Some of your identity gets wrapped up in it. And so the possibility for it to be just for fun is at risk a lot, depending on how much you give to it.
Every like we can't take a break from our emotional life. You know, every single aspect of it has will prompt something from us, and we need to be consistently vigilant that the thing that is prompting from us is the healthiest thing possible. We need to be consistently vigilant that the thing that we're doing integrates with the rest of our lives and the rest of our mentality. If we're sectioning something off and saying, you know, like, oh, this is my break from things, then
Yeah.
that become that's a, you know, not that that's essentially a problem, but like, you know, question that, you know. That's all I'm saying. And I think, like, to get, you know, talking about the original topic of how I use games in therapy, like that's kind of where, like, that's the end, at the end of the right answer. Like, we code games as like frivolous in our head, but that's a cultural destination. It's not like reality. You know, like there
Right.
are some, you can imagine a culture that takes their games very seriously. Or subculture, or whatever it is. And, you know, like, why not? Why can't I use this tool? You know, I
Right.
mean, it's like, it's a tool like any other tool. I don't put that stigma of gaming on the tool that I'm using.
Yeah. Also, anybody who's ever rage quit is guilty of taking their game very seriously.
Over competitiveness. I may do a separate video on over competitiveness.
Actually, that's something that board gaming has been great for me for. So, with my anxiety, comes fear of not doing a good enough job. And connected to that is the fact that I can be overly competitive. I've come a long way since I was a kid. I had a hard time with losing games when I was younger. And, being a board gamer and losing most of the time has actually been really, really good for me. But,
Interesting.
and it's a really good way for me to vent some of my competitive instincts, but in a place where I'm able to, you know, be among friends, deal with like that subset of my personality. And also actually choosing the career that I did has been good because when you're a teacher, your success is the success of other people.
Mhm.
So it really helps you dampen the competitive urges that you have.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
so for me that's been a good way to handle it.
I've done
But
that work with younger people. You know, we're talking like preteen, you know,
yeah.
like, you know, 6, 7, 8. There's a lot of sore loserism at that age group.
Yeah. I see it
And
every day.
so I will whoop that behind, whip some kid's butt at a Uno or something simple, or Monopoly. Oh man, people hate losing at Monopoly because, like, a loss of Monopoly is like you're bankrupt and you got nothing going on. And, you know, it's like, how does, you know, let's does it feel that bad? Let's work through the feelings again. It's kind of exposure therapy type thing. Like, yeah, that is absolutely a work I can do, and that's with a small child. I think that people are very, like, okay with the idea of play therapy,
Yeah.
you know, like for a smaller child. So like, that's not something I have to defend. I could talk all about it all day, but it's not something I have to like explain.
Right.
Therapy games with adults is something I have to do a little bit more explaining about, which why I appreciate the chance to do it here.
Yeah. So speaking of, you mentioned that games are a safe place
Yeah.
and that they are comforting, but a lot of the games I play are really brutal and I lose a lot. So how do you balance, if somebody's working through something, games also carry an inherent risk or maybe even likelihood of defeat. And how do you incorporate that into creating a sense of trust and safety in someone?
Right. So I that's a really great question. I think I have to answer it a couple of ways. First of all, I won't play a heavy game. Like, there is a limit to how heavy I'll play. So I think there's different kinds of feeling defeated in a game. So like, there is, I was defeated because my opponent was, you know, just like straight up had great moves. I had good moves. My opponent had a little bit of better moves. That's a certain type of loss, right?
Right.
Or I lost because of the roll the dice. Like, okay, I lost. They rolled 6 claws in King of Tokyo, and I lost because of that. So that's fine. And then there's losses that it's like I wasn't good enough at the game. I wasn't smart enough.
Yeah.
I'm not picking this up very well. Like, you know, I think even like a game as simple as Seven Wonders, because of the way like the science track works, and you have to like calculate the cubes or the, you know, square roots and sets and everything. Like, I think that game can make people feel dumb. And that's the
Yeah.
kind of loss that I don't I don't find very I'm not gonna go that direction in therapy. If I'm gonna play a game, it's gonna be losses for those other reasons. Um, so then I guess like so what where do you want it to go from that? Did you want to talk about like just those like which aspect of loss did you want to get a little further into?
Ooh, I was just thinking on the baseline of, if you are already feeling like the world is against you and things can't go right, and then the game also doesn't go right, does that accidentally push you further into your self defeating viewpoint?
Right.
Or can being defeated in a game kind of fix that? Because, like, oh, well, it's just a game. I'm still alive. I'm still here.
Mhm. I think so. Okay, that's good. That's clarifying. So the losses where that make people feel dumb, that's the least recoverable. Like
Hmm.
that causes the most injury, I find. I think the point of a game is not only to have fun, but to kind of feel clever,
Right. Yes. Yeah.
And I think if a game like the structure of a game because of the weight of the game. I think if you're playing a game and you're losing because you feel like you're not good enough or you feel dumb, that's gonna be reinforcing, and that's kind of that is separate work.
Yeah.
So like if it's a game where I've lost a lot, it's like okay, I'm just whatever. I mean, I know I'm a loser in life, but like I won because like chances are good that like the lost luck was like some kind of like humor incurring moment. So like I may have lost, but I had a good time. I laughed, so I can just kind of like I can chalk that up to it as an overall win,
Yeah.
right?
That makes
So
sense.
it's like
Yeah.
we played King of Tokyo. Oh, I lost, but that was really fun. We had a really great time. I won at that 45 minutes in life.
Right.
And now I'm going back to the other thing. So like I've done the thing that I want to do is take a break from life. I don't need I'm not invested in the outcome of the game. So I think that's another aspect to it. I think like, if people are reacting to losses that way, to question, okay, what are you attached to? What have you lost? Are you over invested in the outcome?
Mm.
Or is your goal in the game to have fun or to connect? To have a
Hmm.
good time, like, so then, if people are kind of having a loss, like, reaction, that's the whenever you have, like, distress, look for the attachment. Like, what are they attached to?
Right.
And, like, bad emotions come from, separating a separation of attachment, right?
Hmm.
So then, like, okay, you're having a really bad time with this loss. What did you want to achieve? What is that thing that you're attached to? What did you want to achieve? Are you a competitive person who defines themselves by their wins, by positive
Right.
outcomes? Is that how you define yourself? And can we go in a different direction, or at least question that, or say, okay, did you have a good time? Did you learn something? I'm a huge guy about like I don't believe in failure. You either win or you learn. You know,
Yeah.
um, so I try to realign their attachment and like redefine like what their goal is when they start to, get that losing feeling. It's harder to do when people lose because they don't think they were smart enough.
Mm. I can see that.
So,
Yeah, that's actually
but
something
that's
I
the
struggle
general.
with. I struggle with that as a teacher too. I think part of my job is actually providing material in Latin for the kids to learn. And then the bigger part of my job is making the students feel liked, supported, and Jedi mind tricking them into believing that they can do things that they didn't think that they could do. And, but I do feel that my students at least are more risk averse than I've always been fairly risk averse. I take way more risks now as an adult than I was willing to as a kid because I was very concerned, right? That if I messed up, that it would like ruin the whole world.
I mean, you're a
So
Dice
I
Tower
understand where they're
reviewer. You have your own YouTube channel, so that's all
yeah,
risky in and of itself.
it took me 6 months to be able to look at and hear myself comfortably in editing. It took a long time for me to be okay with how I sounded and how I looked. And I think that that's actually probably pretty common. I think maybe a lot of content creators don't talk about that. But learning how to really look at yourself can be a weird experience.
Mhm.
So, I just for me I'm just like, well, I want to do it, so I can either not do it or I can get going, time to buck up, and so, that's, I've, I have a tendency to sort of power through my anxiety if I really want something, but my students don't necessarily know that there's something good at the other side.
Mhm.
And so getting them to make the jump can be really hard. And do you find that gaming also, I don't know, do you find that gaming gets your clients to reveal more of themselves to you and to relax, even if they don't necessarily realize it? Does it help buttoned up people kind of give a little more?
No question. I mean, that is part of the goal. Like so I mentioned before about like there's specific games that I'll tune to different what uh issues, I will say. Um 95% of therapy is building relationship. Like that is like the core of if you're not building a relationship, you're not doing a darn thing as a therapist. So, I mean, insofar as any game can create a relationship, with people, any game involves connection. Any game involves, whether it's like some kind of like shared contract. So, like if we're playing like a Uno, we're not gonna like, I'm not gonna punch you in the face for playing draw four on me. You know,
That does not work both ways. Okay.
we have this contract, but we do have a contract that we're going to accept a certain level of ha ha, I made you draw a bunch of cards, or ha ha, I skipped you a bunch. So
Right.
so there's a so I and in that interchange, in that like agreeing to agree, like we talked about the stable rule set, we've agreed to it. It's not just there, like we've
Right.
agreed to it, and so like just any little bit of relationship building is good. Any little bit of buy-in to a shared experience in a shared space is good. So, remind me of your original question. I apologize for that.
Oh, I was just asking, do you get your clients to reveal more about themselves than they intended to by playing a
Right,
game
right,
with
right.
them?
Yeah. I mean, clients okay, so I just want to like question the phrasing. Like clients always intend to say everything. Like yeah, I think
Yeah, yeah.
way more often than not, I think a client gets it that like this is the place where we're going to, where I'm going to say what I got to say. The
Right.
issue is we don't always know what we got to say. Like
Okay.
it's a block in our head that like I want to say something, I can't quite say it, I can't quite access it. We call it accessing, whatever the emotion is. Like I say, I feel so way. Like people who like have like they feel like they're gonna cry, but they can't. I was like, they're trying to watch movies, they're trying to do sad things, and they can't
Yeah.
kind of get it. And it's just like we don't like our minds are huge. They better be huge, or else we'd be dumb. So they better be huge and complex and way beyond our understanding.
Yeah.
So I think the best use of games is to access something that they can't even do it. It's not like I've made them comfortable, now they can do it. It's like I have broken down, I've made them use another part of their brains, and that
Mhm.
removed the barrier. So now that they can like kind of say something, if that makes sense. So if like, let's say, I don't, this has never happened, it's hypothetical. So let's say I'm playing a big game Pandemic, and the person is just like, whatever, whatever. And, we're playing and something happens, and they all of a sudden it's like, oh my God, I'm afraid I'm going to die from having a disease. It's like, oh, I never thought I'm 35. Why should I be afraid of this? But I never really realized I'm afraid of it. But like, yeah, I'm afraid that
Right, right.
I'm gonna die. They couldn't get there on their own. So like, so I think probably a more kind of to the point way of articulating that is like, I think helping them say what they want to say, even if they can't currently say.
Mhm. That makes sense. Yeah. I think that, I mean, for me on the client end, right? Sometimes there are things that I feel like I know I need to talk about them, but I just don't want to yet. So I have to work my way around to it.
Okay.
And then yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
there are also, I mean, I think the reason I think I've actually I believe everybody should go to therapy. I think it's a good thing. Just because having someone to talk to often leads you to saying things that you didn't intend to say. But
Mhm.
then you realize, wait, I did need to say that. That was in there. Like I didn't come in realizing that was what I needed, but I came out realizing that I had needed something that I found.
Yeah, I think yeah. So yeah, to your point, yes, there are definitely things that clients like. I don't want to reveal this. Like there have been,
Yeah.
I've been in therapy for like 1 or 2 years. Like, oh, by the way, I'd never mentioned this. It's like I've been meaning to, but it's like I get it. So it's like
Yeah.
there's no judgment. Absolutely. Man, wow, this is. I just had something else. What'd you say again? What were you saying about
Oh, I had just said that I often either have to work myself up to saying something that I know I should but don't feel like it, or maybe there's something that I needed to confront but I didn't realize I did. And I
yeah.
feel like that's what you're speaking to. That
Yeah,
sort of
so either one, yeah. So like you either do it consciously or unconsciously. Like they're either holding, like in terms of the holding back.
yeah.
Yeah, that's what I want to say. Um, I'm hesitant to say that I'm like it's all and on that particular end, it's all about relationship building. And
Yeah.
games are a tool to build relationship among many, many, many other tools. So I'm hesitant to say like, okay, well, games though, thank God games are there because they help people talk. That in terms of that just basic relationship building, that one I'm just gonna like use other like I actually art does that better.
Mhm.
Art does that in terms of just the relationship building and just the helping people say things and talk. I'm a huge fan of art therapy. I'm a terrible artist. Terrible artist. Stick figure theater.
I'm a stick figure drawer as well. It's okay.
Stick figure theater. But okay, so like I'll give you an example. This happened when I was in practice in New York. So so I think she's like in her like early 20s, still living at home, having a lot of mom issues, right? And so like she just, she just tell like she was kind of not really wanting to say because she didn't want to criticize mom, but mom had done a
Right.
lot of damage. So she's in that middle space of like, I know I have to confront some things, but it's she's mom, I'm a disrespect, and all that. And then, so we just did an art project and like the art was horrendous. It was a stick figure of mom, and she was like, I just kind of drew her bigger little skirt thing, and then I drew the client on the floor, like laying down horizontal because like that she had a lot of like drinking, so she'd come home drunk and everything, and then I made a little squiggle next to the head as like indicating kind of vomit on the floor, and all it is one stick figure horizontal, one stick figure vertical, and then like a little squiggle next to the head, and this woman just burst into tears just like just like the waterworks because the guilt and the resentment and like don't judge me mom type thing and how could
Yeah.
you let me get to this position and I'm not a bad person like all that stuff was just from like a pictorial representation very simple and I'm not the games are because games come pre-packaged
Right.
their own art, it's their own vision, it's their own kind of working. So they provoke different kinds of emotions, but in terms of access, I'd rather have them more open-ended,
Yeah.
stuff. And or maybe even RPG.
Yeah.
In art, getting people. I once had a girl make her own character, and she gave herself high con and high end. No, she gave herself high con and low end. And I said, Do you really have an 8 end?" And she's like, "Yeah, I'm dumb."
Oh no.
And I was like, "You're not dumb." And it was in the process of making a character that she kinda accessed her root feeling that even though
Yeah.
she's smart, she thinks she's dumb. And
Oh
then we
man.
moving through that process, and as a teacher, I know you really got there because you've been there. You know that you've seen where a student feels like they're dumb, but objectively they're smart.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, I actually run into that all the time. I think it's easier to tell yourself that you're not smart than it is to be smart and mess up.
Right, right.
I think that's what it is. Um, of course, the other issue that I do run into is I have students who just genuinely struggle and they watch other people just racing along and they feel bad. And I find that literally anything to build confidence is worth the time and worth the effort. Because from my perspective, like I think a lot of students think that you see them, and maybe clients are like this too. Like I don't really know how my therapist sees me. Does it make sense? I'm sure there's all sorts of things I could project, but but I think my students look at me and I think that sometimes they think that when I give them a grade, I'm telling them what I think of them as opposed to what their work indicated about their current knowledge of Latin. And those are two very different things.
No question.
Um
Right.
and helping I think people separate their their worth as a person from their performance in a specific area is way more important than we think. I think especially for young people.
Oh my god, yeah. I mean, like young people, their whole life is like, academics. Like that's how
Yeah.
they're rated. And like we talk, we can go on a whole different rant about grades. And
Oh
and it's
god.
almost like how grades kind of are in a ways like almost like acts of violence against
I think
people.
so.
You
Yeah.
know? I mean, in a way, look, grades are fine. But, like, the way we use grades to, like, okay, you can't get to the next level until you achieve certain things at this level, and if you fall short of this, then it's like you're a dumb person, you're a bad person, you're behind, you're and the way we've leveraged grades into, like, this is the evaluation, we've reduced people to their grade. That's the
Yes.
violence. That is violence.
Yeah, as a teacher, I would say that grading is my very least favorite part of the job. I hate assigning grades. Um, my grades are something that I have to do, and if it was up to me, I'd probably like have fewer students and then write everybody a really long letter about their areas of strength and weakness and what I perceived about them in class, and
Mhm.
like have that instead of a grade. Because well, it's actually just like writing a review, right? Like you and I were talking about this literally before we started this recording of people just want what's the rating? What do you rate it? What's the rating? And it's so much more complicated than that. Like you need to listen to the review because the rating is not this objective thing out there in the middle of nowhere, just like etched on the universe. Like it's a very contextual, very personal. Like every nine that I give on a board game or whatever, right? I give for a different reason because the game does something different that I felt was valuable. Or if it's a game that I dislike, I very rarely dislike a bunch of games for the exact same reason. You know, like
I do not think Uno is as good a game as Gloomhaven, people. I gave both a 9, but people think like, "Oh my god, this is a terrible thing." It's like, no, it's context. It's all context. It's all what I'm doing. It's all what the person is responding to. It's all have I tried things differently? And then, they come do they what they come back to is like it's all contextual. And it's the same thing with grading. It's the same thing, with just like self-judgment, self-evaluation. I think that it's safe,
yeah,
right? It's safe to have a standard. It feels reassuring. It's like the Dice Tower Serial Excellence. It's very reassuring to know, like, okay, if a game has that, it's probably
right.
good. And so I threaten that by giving that, Uno a 9. It's like, oh my god, you've ruined it. I don't feel safe anymore. The seal has been ruined, whatever, whatever. And then, with grading, like I can't tell you, like school grading, because I was a teacher too. I can't tell you how reassured people felt, how like affirmed and just like validated people felt when they got whatever grade and how invalidated they felt when they fell short,
Yeah,
and that is it's something we have to look to culturally, and it's something that I absolutely treat in therapy all the time.
yeah.
Our inner judge is something I absolutely treat all the time in therapy.
Yeah, and I mean, full disclosure, that's basically my whole life. School was always the thing I was really good at. It's the thing I've been best at my entire life. You know, I was a great student, always. But that also meant that when I didn't know something, it was really stressful. I probably hate math more than I should because I associated math with risk of getting a bad grade and therefore failure. But
Interesting.
like for me, failure means like less than a 95. You know what I mean? Like, it's ridiculous. But the thing that also kind of sucks about that though, and it's I don't regret where my life has gone, but it's true. You know, I got the grades and then I got into the fancy college. I got great grades at the fancy college. I got into the fancy grad school. Basically, my patterns of work rewarded me for my entire life until I had an advisor who was sort of neglectful and I had to find my own non-external source of validation.
Mm.
And I think that the thing that's the most insidious about these sorts of things, right, is that it pays off in the long run for a while.
There's a lot of incentive. Yeah, the incentive
Yeah.
structure is perverse in this case,
Yeah.
where it's like you are rewarded for neglecting self-care.
Yeah.
And,
I think
like
that's also
staying up all night and banging out that extra credit thing, and that's rewarded in this society.
oh yeah, that's also though what makes games dangerous in a way, especially video games, for me anyway, is that again, they reward neglecting other aspects of your life. They all call you, notification on the phone or, there are games that you can't pause, games that you can't just save and quit, games that hold you as long as they can because that's the goal of the game is to hold you, not to fulfill you. And I don't know, for me that's what board games do for me is they give me something that doesn't keep me trapped. It's
Mhm.
a very free relationship between my games and me, and I like that.
Yeah, the game experience itself is very severable from, you
Yeah.
know, you obviously, you don't want to interrupt the whole game of Twilight Imperium if you're into it and everything, but you
Right.
can go to the bathroom, you can
Yeah.
go grab a soda and come back to your turn, and it's not it and yeah, in a way, like, the severability, the tactileness, we mentioned before, we'd rather play a board game than a video game a lot of the time. There's certain ones I like, I prefer Onirim on the app because I don't like shuffling, all that.
See, I do like shuffling because for me it's a meditative, like, "Oh, this feels really
Mhm.
nice,"
And
like, kinda thing.
I'm good on shuffling. So, like, for the most part, though, like, I have a much more satisfying time with the tactile experience of a board game. Like, like, again, like, so, I mean, board games offer certain experiences. They're not universal. They don't offer everything, and you have to work with it over time. You have to, like, if you're a parent, which board games,
Yeah.
and how are you gonna play the board game? Are you gonna play rules as written? Are you gonna adjust some things? Like, you have to be smart with this stuff. I'm not gonna say board games are frivolous. I'm not gonna say board games are awesome at everything. There is a lane, right? That's the goal of my therapist, the goal of myself as a parent is to find what board games are good at, and they're good at some things, and go
Mhm.
for it. They're not good at
Yeah.
everything. If there's something that, in terms of the relationship building, I'm gonna go more at the art direction or something else, and there's all sorts of tools in the chat. It's human experience, man. Games are just part of the human experience to me.
Yeah. That makes I can feel that. So, normally self-medication is not recommended, but in the case of games, I think we can make an exception.
Yeah.
So, if you're as a final question, if you're looking to play games for relaxation or for being more centered, what are some recommendations that you would give to our listeners?
Okay, for like general, like,
Yeah.
feeling good, feeling better. Like
Yeah.
the Calm app, but for board games.
Correct. I love the comment. Full disclosure, everyone.
I've mentioned a few. I've mentioned Only I've mentioned parks. Sunset Over Water is one that I like. That does the parks thing of like beautiful cards, beautiful artwork, meditative, safe kind of like stuff. I mean, beyond like so that's my personality. Like I find pandemic
Mhm.
relaxing. Like I can separate the theme of it, like these are diseases. Like I've played
Right.
thousands of games of pandemic, whether it's on the app, whether it's in person, whether it's expansions, whether it's different iterate. I've played thousands of games. Like I don't see the theme anymore. It's just like what is it's like cubes on a board. It's not a very random game. It's not like there's like blue is gonna come out. Like it's not like like a Arkham Horror game. They love putting like all sorts of crazy things. Now all of a sudden the whole board state has changed. Oh my god. Pandemic's not like that. Pandemic is calm, stable, but challenging.
Yeah.
Like I mean, an outbreak's occurring somewhere, but I don't know where. So then when the outbreak comes, I go deal with it. Like I mean, to me, like that's why it's my favorite game. I know we're supposed to do top like 50-50 at some point, like just blow it out. I'm already ruining number one, people. Pandemic is by far and away, it'll always be because just what you said, Liz, it offers that meditative, calm, stable, challenging,
Mhm.
dynamic. It just puts together so many things for me.
Yeah.
So I think it's going to be different for other people, but those are the ones that I can kind of like recommend. And also, King of Tokyo. Like, the
Hmm.
more I play King of Tokyo, and I know it's like, it's, like Rock'em Sock'em, like, that's a theme is Rock'em Sock'em, and I get that part, but, like, I find that the rule set is so simple, and the dice, the big chunky dice, I don't think it would be as good with smaller dice, weirdly. The big chunky dice and people like, and, like, the whole thing of it is really just I wouldn't say calming, but it's reassuring. And it's
Right.
just stable fun every time I take it out. So, I mean, it's there's a lot. There's a lot. If you're a scientist, maybe even periodic. I look at periodic over here. Like if you're a science, this is a really, really outstanding one for if you have that brain space because it's just basically the periodic table, but like they laid a game on top of it. And like this
Hmm.
abstract kind of like I'm gonna put Celsius or calcium and sodium make salt and ooh, whatever works.
Hey, Whatever works. And so I've already mentioned this earlier, but where can people find you on the internet?
I am on Shelf Stories. So I'm not sure exactly sure how I'm going to put this on Shelf Stories, but it will appear on my channel. At some point after Liz posts. Shelf Stories is a YouTube channel. It's my talking head channel where I have interviews like this one. I have chats with a lot of friends, designers, publishers about their latest Kickstarters or about some interesting topic. Also, I do my Shelf Help series, which is specifically focused on aspects of mental health. I try to make them bite sized as much as I can. I'm working on that. But it's I think I've had some interesting discussions, and I make people. My greatest happiness is to make people think with that series. So that is Shelf Stories. I'm also reviewing the Dice Tower with Liz.
Yeah.
Blessed to be do our thing together. I'm also a playthrough person with the One Stop Co-op Shop. So I'm not hard to find.
And that is a very good thing. And as usual, everybody, you can find me anywhere on the internet as Beyond Solitaire. Thank you so much for listening and happy gaming.
Later, everybody.